She should have been walking down the aisle, white dress pressed, vows tucked in her hand, a future waiting just a few steps away. But instead, the sound that filled the air wasn't church bells. It was a gunshot, a single crack that ripped through the calm of a September afternoon, hours before she was set to say, "I do." By the time the sun dipped below the stained glass windows of St. Mary's Church, the bride-to-be, who had dreamed of this day since childhood, would never make it to the altar. And the person behind the trigger wasn't a stranger in the shadows. It was someone far closer, someone no one ever expected. Olivia Hart grew up 2 blocks from the river, in a town where everyone knew one another. She was born on April 16, 1996, the youngest of 3 children, with a laugh that seemed too big for her small frame. Her mother, Denise, described her as a child who always carried notebooks filled with drawings. Olivia loved designing pretend buildings, crafting entire imaginary towns where people lived happily together. She could make anything beautiful, Denise recalled. Even a paperclip became part of her little world. That imagination never left her. As an adult, Olivia became a kindergarten teacher, someone who thrived on structure and creativity. Every morning at 9:05, circle time began with a song. Every afternoon, the nap room smelled of lavender oil. She believed in the small magic of daily rituals. Her students called her Miss Liv. Her colleagues described her as steady, dependable, and endlessly kind. In the summer of 2020, Olivia met Ethan Shaw at a local volunteer event. He was a firefighter, 6 years older than her, with a broad smile and a quiet confidence. Their connection was immediate. Friends remember the way Ethan watched Olivia talk, as if the rest of the world blurred. By December of that year, they were inseparable. Olivia often said she had finally found someone who made her feel safe, someone who understood her need for both laughter and calm. By the spring of 2022, Ethan proposed during a riverside picnic, presenting a simple silver ring. Olivia said yes through tears. The wedding date was set for September 14th, 2024. The months leading up to the wedding were filled with the usual chaos of planning. Olivia obsessed over flower arrangements and the perfect playlist for the reception. Ethan handled logistics with the church. Together, they hired Caleb Pierce, a local videographer known for his cinematic style, to capture the day. Caleb had grown up in the same neighborhood as Olivia. He was quiet, polite, often described as a little odd, but harmless. Hiring him seemed like a way to support someone local. No one could have guessed how dangerous that decision would become. Friends later admitted there were subtle signs Caleb's attachment to Olivia was unusual. He lingered at planning meetings longer than necessary. He asked questions not about the wedding shots, but about Olivia's favorite colors, her routines, her family. When Olivia laughed it off, Ethan grew uneasy. But Caleb was a familiar face, someone they'd known in passing for years. It didn't feel like a threat. On the morning of September 14th, 2024, Olivia woke up surrounded by bridesmaids. Her veil was folded neatly in a drawer. Her vows, written in blue ink, waited in an envelope. Denise remembered Olivia standing at the kitchen counter, humming as she buttered toast. She was glowing, her mother said. She had that kind of light you only get once in your life. Ethan was already at the church, checking last-minute details. Guests were on their way. The day should have unfolded with joy. But at 2:37 p.m., just hours before the ceremony, everything changed. Olivia stepped outside the church with her maid of honor, heading toward the parking lot to retrieve a forgotten bouquet ribbon. Witnesses heard the crack of a gunshot echo across the lot. A scream followed. Olivia collapsed, blood spreading across the gravel. Chaos erupted. Guests rushed outside, some dialing 911, others screaming her name. When first responders arrived minutes later, Olivia was unresponsive. The bouquet she had carried was stained red, petals scattered across the asphalt. Paramedics worked frantically, but the wound, a single shot to the chest, was catastrophic. By 3:02 p.m., Olivia Hart was pronounced dead. Police immediately began searching for the shooter. Witnesses reported seeing a man flee the scene in a dark sedan. Within an hour, suspicion turned to Caleb Pierce, the videographer who had failed to show up at the church despite confirming attendance that morning. Officers traced his car to a wooded area outside town, where they found him sitting alone, the gun still in his hand. Caleb surrendered without resistance. His first words, chilling in their simplicity, were, "She was supposed to be mine." Investigators dug into Caleb's past and uncovered a disturbing pattern. Though never charged with a crime before, Caleb had a history of obsessive behavior toward women he admired. Former classmates described him as socially awkward, someone who confused friendliness with romantic interest. A co-worker recalled Caleb once saying, "If I can't have her, no one should." Years earlier, he had been briefly investigated after sending repeated messages to a female colleague, but the case was dropped for lack of evidence. What shocked Olivia's family and community was the realization that Caleb had been planning this. On his laptop, police found files labeled "Lives Day," containing notes about her schedule, photographs taken without her knowledge, and even a drafted letter confessing feelings he believed she reciprocated. It was clear he had built a fantasy world around Olivia, one in which her marriage to Ethan was an unbearable betrayal. The trial began in March 2025. Prosecutors argued that Caleb had meticulously planned the attack, purchasing the gun weeks in advance and studying Olivia's routines. They presented the files from his computer, his chilling confession, and testimony from witnesses who saw him lurking near the church in the days before the wedding. Caleb's defense team attempted to argue diminished capacity, claiming his mental health struggles distorted his sense of reality. But the jury was unconvinced. After just 9 hours of deliberation, Caleb Pierce was found guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Olivia's family, the verdict brought a measure of justice, but little peace. Her mother, Denise, said in her victim impact statement, "We raised her to believe in kindness, in helping others. She was taken from us not by a stranger, but by someone who twisted that kindness into something deadly." Ethan, her fiancé, struggled in the aftermath. In interviews, he admitted that he replayed every red flag, every uneasy moment with Caleb, wondering if he should have seen more. "The hardest part," Ethan said, "is knowing she trusted the world, and the world failed her." Olivia's death sparked a wave of advocacy in her community. In 2026, her family founded the Olivia Hart Foundation, dedicated to supporting victims of stalking and obsessive harassment. They pushed for legislation requiring faster police response to stalking complaints and stronger mental health interventions. Local schools now host an annual Lives Day, teaching students about healthy boundaries and respect. The church where Olivia was meant to marry still keeps a small plaque in her memory. Each September, family and friends gather there, laying fresh bouquets at the spot where she fell. Her students, now older, return to share stories of the teacher who believed in their drawings, their songs, their small acts of imagination. The story of Olivia Hart is more than a tragedy. It is a reminder of how quickly trust can turn to danger, and how obsession, if unchecked, can destroy lives. She should have been walking down the aisle, promising forever. Instead, her story ends in a parking lot, her bouquet scattered in the gravel. But her legacy endures in her family's fight for change, in her students' laughter, and in every person who refuses to let her memory fade. If you found this story impactful, please consider sharing your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe enough is being done to protect victims of stalking and obsessive behavior? Should laws be stronger, or are the warning signs simply too subtle until it's too late? Let us know what you think. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us here at Evidence Uncovered, where we bring light to the stories that must never be forgotten.